Happy birthday! It is the 22nd day of my 55th birthday. Happy birthday to me. And on this 22nd day of my 55th birthday, we are launching the Culture Connector with Carla Morrison. Hello, I'm Carla Morrison, your host. And this podcast is all about history, culture, and community. With that being said, we're going to dive in. Today, the first guest is none other than me, Carla Morrison. And I'm going to share a little bit about you and some of my brands, Chit Atlanta, tours being one of them. But I also have a couple of others, Chit Chat Communications, which is a public relations powerhouse public relations firm, and also Sisters of Today and Tomorrow, which is an empowerment organization for girls and the women who raise them. So, about me, Carla Morrison. I am a small town girl with big city dreams, and I landed in Atlanta 30 years ago, 1995 to be exact. And it has been a whirlwind ever since. I've always been a history buff. I have always loved Black history and our culture. I've always been a storyteller since I would want to say the third grade, when my teacher would write in my report card, Carla is a good student, but she just talks too much. And when corrected, she gives a mean look. And then possibly it might have come from when I was a teenager in love with New Edition, and I had over 300 pen pals from across the United States and would write them all letters talking about New Edition because I just loved New Edition. So the communications has always kind of been in my system, or it could come from the radio, because I also used to call WNHC, the first Black radio station in the Northeast. That was 24 hours, and I would call them day and night. Can you play this New Edition songs that weren't on their playlist? And at that time, I didn't understand. You had to have a song on the playlist in order to play it. I'm like, can you play She Gives Me a Bang? That wasn't on the playlist. It was Candy Girl. It was Mr. Telephone Man. Those types of things. But yeah, I am Carla Morrison from New Haven, Connecticut. Been living in Atlanta, Georgia for 30 years. And over these 30 years, I have developed three different businesses. One I came with, which was Chit Chat Communications. So we started that company back in 1993 in the attic of my father's house. And I would do PR for fashion designers, local fashion designers, and fashion shows. And also, one of my bigger projects was with an educator by the name of Burl Bailey. She's an author and educator. And from then on, was always interested in entertainment. And Atlanta was that budding city. And I had planned to come to Atlanta right after I graduated college in 92. But I got a job at Black Beat magazine in New York City. So took that job and worked it, and then ended up working at a record store for a period of time. And then it was time for me to come to Atlanta. And boy, am I glad I came to Atlanta, because this is where I became a woman. Yes, definitely a woman. And have learned so much, not only about myself as a young lady turning into a full-fledged seasoned woman, but as a professional and as a lover of our culture. I mean, it's crazy. So let's dive into it. I get to Atlanta my first week. I've always been a documentarian like my dad. We take photos all over the place. Anything we're going to take a photo of. So I'm going, at this time, we still had film. So I'm going to get my film developed over at Wolf Camera on 14th Street. And as I'm standing in line waiting my turn, I look behind me. Someone walks in and they acknowledge him. Hi, Ambassador. I look behind me and it's Andrew Young, Ambassador Andrew Young, right? And I'm like, is that the man that marched with Martin Luther King? Because you got to understand, I'm coming from New Haven, Connecticut, New England. The only Black history we learned about was Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman. Those were the three people that we would always do our book reports on during Black History Month. So that was our gist. And we had the photos and things like that our family members might have in their homes. And so it's like, I know who that is. That is Andrew Young. Oh my God. Like, what is he doing here? How is he standing behind me? And I don't even think I said anything. I might have said hello. But I just couldn't believe that is someone who marched with Martin Luther King. Because you got to think how we thought from the North. Martin Luther King. That same week, I go to an Atlanta Hawks basketball game. I'm sitting with the press because I also am a journalist, and I'll tell you more about my career path as we continue. And I look across and I see Julian Bond chilling at a basketball game, him and his brother. And I'm like, is that Julian Bond? Oh my God. These are people that marched with Martin Luther King. And so now for people in Atlanta, this is normal. And 30 years in, yeah, this is normal for me too. I could be sitting at their dinner table having lunch with them, or, going to an event, and maybe we might even be on a dance floor dancing together now. But back then, just getting to Atlanta, I could not believe I am seeing real live Black history heroes in person by themselves. You can talk to them, shake their hand, take a picture with them, whatever, exchange numbers. They're that down to earth. So being here in Atlanta has just been a whirlwind, and it doesn't stop with them. I mean, you turn on your TV, Black news anchors all over the place at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 11 o'clock, early in the morning. So this has just been someone who loves their history and culture, and I get that from my dad. Um, it's just been a whirlwind for me. And so, in me being the person that I am, and my mom has always pushed, high self esteem. So, she said I come out the chute thinking I was important. I just did me, did Carla. I'm Carla Morrison with Chit Communications, and continued to be in Atlanta and connecting with different people. I have always been about my community, the Black community. And so it's nothing for me to be in any in any neighborhood throughout Atlanta, talking to my folks, gathering information, because I'm a gatherer of information. My career started out in 1992. As I said, I got a job with Black Beat magazine out of college. And so I've always been a journalist. That's what I majored in college at Bowie State University. And I did that because I was a talker and I loved New Edition, and I used to listen to the radio, and I wanted to be in entertainment. And I met one of my cousins who told me she does public relations, and she told me what she did. And I said, I think I want to do that, but I don't want the babysitting part, because she said you pretty much babysit them, but you promote their brand and who they are. And I love that part. And I just wanted to be in entertainment. But once I got a gist of it, journalism was the route that I was taking, because I wanted to tell the stories. But I also learned about myself. I don't want to just tell the story. I want to tell the positive aspect of the story more so. And in journalism, you just tell the story and then let the reader decide, if that's good or bad. And so I kind of wanted everything that I put out there to be positive and good. And so PR was more of the route that I needed to take. And once I found out about Terry Williams, who we call the godmother of public relations, I said, well, hey, I'm gonna have to follow in this lady's footsteps. And one of my friends got me the book, The Personal Touch. And after I read that, I'm like, yes, that's what I'm doing. And I have been doing public relations ever since. So, as I mentioned, I started out in New Haven, Connecticut, working with fashion designers and fashion shows, as well as an educator, and even an orchestra, New Haven Orchestra, Symphony Orchestra. And then I moved to Atlanta, and one of my first clients here in Atlanta was actually a restaurant. They made Philly cheesesteaks, and I used to go and get them. And so I was like, oh, I gotta, do something with y'all. These are really good. And then, but my first big client out of Atlanta was Cornelius Bennett. He is a NFL great. He played for the Buffalo Bills originally, and then went on to play with the Atlanta Falcons and the Indiana Colts. Is when he retired, and I claim him all day, every day. My number one client. I feel like working with him catapulted me to be known amongst my peers in communications, radio, television, PR. And so I worked with Cornelius, and I handled all of his community outreach along with some of his other colleagues. Jam, which they call Jamal Anderson, is the man. He was a running back at the time. I did a couple of things for him, and Bob Whitfield as well. But Cornelius was my main guy, and that's who I worked with. And from that, I was really able to build the relationships what they would say old Atlanta. And this is not old Atlanta, Martin Luther King era or Marvin Arrington Sr. era, but I would say Marvin Arrington Jr.'s era, right? And so that would be people who were my age who were also coming up. They might have been just leaving out of graduate school, or they might have just started their job at LaFace Records or the radio station. And I'm just coming to Atlanta, so I was able to connect with those folks, and we were able to really build something here, build a culture of its own. And it's just really interesting as time goes on. Um, I still do PR, but not dabbled, I actually worked for 10 years building up young ladies' self esteem through Sisters of Today and Tomorrow. And we would expose them to different career paths, different educational paths, health and fitness, and just helping them to build themselves up as young ladies. And so, in doing that, I called on the people that I knew, which was the people in the entertainment business and the people in communications. And they would come out because for our youth, they were ready to do whatever it took. And so, in doing that, I continue to work in that vein, and I still do. I don't do it as much as I did. At one point, I kind of only did PR for Sisters of Today and Tomorrow, right? And just really was building up the organization. And now in 2025, 30 years later, I have built Chit Chat Atlanta Tours, which is the tourism division of Chit Chat Communications. And I did this because I have been telling stories of people in Atlanta and beyond for over 3 decades, right? And I thought, when people come to town, I'm always like, you want to do a tour? You want to go to Martin Luther King's house where he lived before he was assassinated? Because everybody knows about, Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolence and the house where he was born up the street. But do they actually know about where he lived before he was assassinated and the high school that he went to? They might know about his college. And so I knew those things and wanted to share because I've always been that type of person. I'm a sharer. And so, being a sharer, I have shared everything about what I know in terms of the history of Atlanta. And it's so much more, from Alonzo Herndon, and all of what he has done as an entrepreneur and his company being really the backbone of the civil rights movement. To T.I. coming from Bankhead, the streets, and using his talent to become this mega super rapper and entertainer who is also a businessman owning half of the block on Bankhead and around the corner. But there's so much to share. And I think I have shared all I can in this first episode because it was only supposed to be 5 minutes. But I'm a talker, I'm chit chat. So I'm going to talk. You're going to get more culture, stories, business, and I'll have guests. But today it was about me introducing myself to you all. So happy 22nd birthday to me as I launch this podcast, Cultural Connector with Carla Morrison, because I am your connector to our culture in Atlanta and beyond. Peace.